Committee this Thursday afternoon, January 22nd, and we are going to have some more testimony on H626 from the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. Thank you so much for being here and for your patience.
Thanks. For the record, my name is Kim McManus with the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. If you can't hear me, just ask me to speak up. The voice just keeps coming and going. I'm not quite sure what's going on. My cold from 2 weeks ago just doesn't want to leave me. So thank you for having us in on H626. The testimony this morning, I was able to listen to some of it and so powerful. I can tell you, you heard many stories this morning. I have a member in my family, a young member in the family, who this exact same thing happened to, not in this state, in a different state. 16-year-old boy thought he was chatting with someone in his neighborhood, was asked to, exchange pictures, sensitive pictures, did so, and then same exact storyline of the same evening, except it had a better outcome. He was so distraught when he was started to be threatened for money, for disclosing to his neighborhood. He absolutely thought my life is over and was taking steps towards harming himself. And fortunately, a wonderful police officer who had been called, the one family member was scared about his behavior, called the police. Police officer was able to kind of talk him out of crisis and then was able to get him to share what happened. So did not have the same result as the wonderful parents you heard from today, but the harm for him, he wound up in a psych hospital for about a week, 10 days, and then had to be slowly transitioned out to outpatient care, missed not months of school, I think about 6 weeks of school, and was just, a tremendously traumatizing event for him and his family. So at a professional and personal level, I appreciate what this bill is
Kim,
trying to do.
Before you get into the bill,
Yes.
along with your story, that something came up, and just when you said that a law enforcement officer got involved and whatever, it might even be the question for Tom, if there's training around this type of thing for law enforcement officers to handle, or if it's been talked about, possibly do something in the future, because it's a whole new thing.
Yeah, and I heard earlier that question come up about training, and it would be interesting to connect with the Chiefs Association or the Sheriff's Association about ongoing training. I do know that our Vermont State Police have a division around, I'm going to get it wrong, and I meant to look it up beforehand, but shoot, I'm going to look it up for you and I will send it to you. But around these more just technical cyber investigations. And then we do have ICAC,
Right.
crimes against children, the internet crimes against children. So I think for law enforcement in Vermont, they're an excellent resource. So when this comes up, you have somebody to reach out to. The particular officer involved in my family's case, I think officers in general are taught that de-escalation and crisis, like they didn't know why my family member was acting the way they were acting. They just knew he wasn't well. But he was able to talk him down to the point where he could explain, the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm thinking kind of some kind of specific, maybe not even a training, an awareness, something, just because maybe it's already done, or maybe law enforcement is already really aware of it, this new realm now. And that's kind of the way my mind works, I guess. But I know I kind of.
Well, and as
even awareness, if you run into something where, a youth ends up in a situation that they need to call ICAC, something as simple as that.
Well, and that's something with a change in this law. anytime there's changes in the law enforcement are trying to keep up on those changes. And then if they're seeing cases like this in their community, each law enforcement does their training above and beyond the annual training. So I would imagine they're doing it I don't know if they're doing it proactively, like before a case winds up in their community, but this would definitely give a platform to push and suggest that training.
So do you have anybody you could suggest, or you don't have to do right now, you can shoot me an email from the state police. I think we'll reach out to the Chiefs of Police Association, but if there's somebody that that is involved in these kind of cases that you could recommend that we have come in and testify, that'd be great.
Yes, happy to do that.
I don't know, the bill idea people or who came up with this or you, I could maybe, it seems interesting that, the stateside component of this, if it's, orchestrated outside of the country, inside the country. I mean, it seems like one of those too good to be true scenarios where someone's giving you 20% of an awful lot of money to participate in this. That there should be some potential liability there. And could be included in this. I'm not sure about how that would go.
Are you going on the 6 people down in Atlanta that financially got their hands slapped?
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying.
Something.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting of the folks benefiting from the monetary side of these
Well,
threats.
yeah. Activates probably, whatever.
The particulars of the bill, just had one thing to point out and then a question. The first section on voyeurism makes perfect sense of how Ledge Council broke it up to separate out and clarify the unlawful photographing, there we go, filming or recording separate from viewing. One question I had on we'll jump to a few places, but on page 5, the display or disclosure to a third party under voyeurism. When you look to the penalty for this under voyeurism, it's a 5-year penalty, and that's on page 7. It cross-references back to the subsection E. And I just wanted
Yep,
to,
line number.
sorry, on page 7, line 7
Yep.
is the violation of subsection E, which jumps us back to page 5, 14 through 19, which that was the past penalty for old subsection C, and that's fine. But then when we go into disclosure of sexually explicit images without consent, on page 9, if you're disclosing an image, which would be the same as disclosing some of the images under voyeurism, the penalty is 2 years, a misdemeanor. So I just wanted to point that out, whether that was on purpose or just not cross-referenced yet. And just when you're looking at the penalties, because right now we'd be able to charge the same crime under 2 different statutes with 2 very different penalties.
So it's not so it should be 5 years if we're being consistent.
If you're being consistent with the current voyeurism penalty, though again, that penalty, and I can't figure out what was old C when it all got moved around, because there's 2 penalties in voyeurism. There's the first offense, and then second offense, and then this now subsection E offense. We just might need like a chart from Ledge Council
Yes.
of like a side by side. I didn't have time to do that. But that might help, but I just saw that was inconsistent.
Okay.
The other question I had on page 9, line 19 through 21, the threatening to disclose the image. The way it reads right now with the clause without the person's consent, I just want to talk through that piece. So as you heard this morning, many of the folks engaging with the other person consensually gave that image or video at the beginning, right? Thought they were talking to somebody they knew. And then it was only after the image was given that they were then being threatened. And no doubt, if they were asked, would have removed their consent. So I just want to, like, without the person's consent, like, do the prosecutor right now would need to show that the person revoked their consent if they gave it originally. And like, can we show that just by the fact that they're being threatened?
They already gave it before.
Yes, if they consensually gave it at the beginning. So I just, yes, I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
I see that, and so it's one of those things you have to keep following, like, this is modifying which part of the sentence?
Exactly, that's what I struggled with, so.
Yeah, so it's saying no person shall knowingly threaten to disclose a visual image without the person's consent. But you're saying since the image was produced with consent, does that consent attach to the disclosure or?
Well, so I guess, right, this is where my English construction starts to fall apart a little bit, but this without the person's consent clause, right? Knowingly threaten to disclose a visual image. So you're saying the person's not consenting to being threatened?
I'm saying that the person's not consenting to the disclosure of the image. But you're reading it very differently, which is important.
Right, and that's like, I would, so it doesn't. Right, I'm reading it threaten to disclose. And you have like a space somewhat.
So maybe like if it said, no person shall knowingly threaten to disclose without, comma, without the person's consent, comma, a visual image of an identified person who is nude or something, that, would that be like getting the lack of consent closer to the disclosure?
Right, but my struggle is that the person very well consented to their photo being shared with this person, right? Like I've sent you a photo, I'm like, haha, this is fun, back and forth, right? Then you threaten me. Then do I have to say, I do not consent to you threatening me or disclosing my picture? Like that's, like right now, I have to show that you don't consent.
Consent is a minor.
Well, that's all.
You can't. That's interesting.
So I mean, I guess
You
you.
don't have the consent to pass it on, though.
Right, like, I guess you could, like, I could threaten to send something, you could be like, knock yourself out, go ahead, right? Then theoretically, you've given me consent, like I can share this photo of you,
Yeah.
like you're, and in effect, you're not feeling threatened
Yeah.
by me. I'm just,
Can I just ask you, should we just strike without the person's consent on line 21?
well, that's what I wanted to raise it and talk through it. And again, maybe this is a question for legislative counsel. I know why that without the person's consent is there. I just don't want to accidentally create a barrier that.
Well, that's another element you have to prove too.
Exactly, right. So if the person, like on the first threat, somebody, it's
Well, I
terrified and no
Or
longer
sort of
engaging.
It
Well,
may
that's the
not
question,
come up
like-
in the whole thing.
So I mean, who consents to somebody when they're gonna have the intent to compel the person to do these other things? I guess
Why would you put that in there?
Right. That's exactly like when I was reading it, I was like, when would we have someone's consent to do any of this?
Well, it gets a little more confusing if we eliminate without the person's consent, you're gonna threaten to disclose. Oh, in order to produce nude images or images of sexual conduct? Oh, okay, well. Engage in sexual conduct, engage in any act against the person's will. Yeah, so I don't know why you need to prove both that intent and then the
And then the
previous.
threatening behavior. right.
Previous one.
In the section above, it makes perfect sense of disclosing an image of someone without the person's consent.
That image was created without consent in some cases, in section. No, okay, not necessarily,
Possibly.
right.
I think it should threaten to disclose an image, whether it was consented to at some point or not, when it's tied to the ill intent for that disclosure. Isn't that the key? Is that what you're saying, kind of?
Yeah.
Yes, it just feels odd that we would have to show that someone didn't consent to this threatening behavior.
Which is, I mean, in the transcripts of these cases, there is very clearly a lack of consent. But if that record doesn't exist, or, if then the prosecutor would have to prove it
Right now with this.
yeah.
Right. Something just to consider.
I think the points you have to prove the
We do appreciate that.
Well,
and just of the elements and that they make sense.
Yeah, I think importantly.
Yeah.
The point that you were making, like, I don't think that anyone would, hard to say and speak in absolutes, but, this isn't behavior that you consent to, that one consents to.
Right.
It's almost the lack of consent is inherent it's like baked into the threat. So I see that point, and I wouldn't feel. You don't always want to remove elements just to make it easier for prosecution.
We're not looking for a short list, but more that it just didn't make sense. Like I kept reading it and I just couldn't
Yes.
make it work in my mind. And so that piece, something to take a look at. And then I know the question about the limitations of prosecutions for certain crimes, whether to have the tolling or just to enlarge the time period. I don't have a strong opinion to give you either way. I will admit I did not have time to do any research as far as on the criminal side tolling, whether there's an issue. I'm happy to do that. But either, as you can see from that section of statute, you can create all sorts of time limits. That's a decision for you all to make. But either way, we understand why you would want it from the time of awareness of the crime. But you could either enlarge the time period or have the tolling. Those were my only two comments.
Do you have any, well, you probably didn't hear the additional suggestions that we're all going to mull over that we heard from the Under Sheriff Larson. And I think Tom Oliver already just mentioned one as far as some way to go after the folks who are the users of, benefiting financially from this. There was a few other things, and I will throw these questions out to you now, and you don't have to answer them right now. But they suggested conspiracy language. My initial thought was that we don't need to have it in this bill because we have conspiracy offense elsewhere. It might be covered elsewhere. But if you could kind of double check that, whether we should consider specifically. And also there was the idea of an enhanced penalty for causing death, but a felony murder. But is that already covered? Do we need to do it in here? I mean, you don't have to answer these. No, but these are the questions that came up. And then I'll see if anybody else has additional ones. And then I think probably most important, because I can see, well, no, the financial one's important, is exemptions for victims who come forward. Because they may have also, they may have produced sexually explicit material underage, and then so some sort of I don't know if that's really good Samaritan law, but that so those are things we're kind of looking at, and if you can get back to us, unless you want to shoot from the hip and tell us what you think of those.
We do not want to do this out.
Good answer.
Mostly, part of these raised and they are important and I would just want to double check and not
Yeah, I think,
be spouting
did
them.
I catch all those?
There was one more that Ian
Yeah.
mentioned, the, an aggravated charge
Mm.
for.
If it involved a child.
Yeah.
We're good with that. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would be an aggravated penalty, right?
Right, and we're gonna have some more testimony on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week and.
Right.
Think about those things.
Happily follow up on
Right.
those questions.
Any other questions for? Yes,
I don't know if you have any direct knowledge of the case in Chittenden County, the case that inspired the change in statute of limitations, and not a sextortion case, but the voyeurism case. And want to make sure if you do have, knowledge of that case, that want to make sure that you've closed loopholes, but covered the challenges, this bill fully addresses the challenges faced by the victims in that case. My understanding was that simply that the statute of limitations had run out. There was no criminal recourse. And then the addition of the change in harm, the definition of harm, that those were kind of the two main issues, as far as I understood, that emerged out of that case. Are you aware of any others, and would there be a statutory remedy you might need to look at?
I am aware of that case from news
Okay.
stories. I believe the harm piece was connected with the civil
Right.
suit,
Right.
not the criminal.
Yeah.
But I will double check to see, other than the statute of limitations running out, whether or not there was an element missing.
Okay.
I'll just do that as a double check with my other pieces, yes.
Any other questions for Kim? Not seeing any, and Charlie, if I can get the contact information of the additional witness that you have for us, we can get from you and to Nate as well. And then we'll look for somebody from the state police, and we'll reach out to the chiefs of police as well for next week, and we have a few other witnesses. So thank you very much. So before, Eric should be on his way over, I just sent him a message, but I just wanted to address really quickly, there's an amendment to H 545, the immunization bill, has to do with informed consent. It's really, so the question was whether we needed to look at that again, or look at the amendment, and I suggested we did not for two reasons. Number one, informed consent is really not our jurisdiction. And number two, even though it isn't our jurisdiction, we had a lot of testimony on it last week. So we heard in the morning from a witness who raised informed consent, and somehow we needed to have that if there was immunity. And in the afternoon, we had testimony from the general counsel of the Department of Health and the executive director of the Vermont Medical Society. So we heard all that, and we decided that, I think appropriately, that really wasn't contingent to immunity. So I just wanted to let you all know if on the floor, this comes up. I don't know if they're going to ask me to weigh in at all on that or not. I don't think they will. I think they'll probably ask me to weigh in on the other component, but I just wanted you all to know that that happened. So, and I do understand that they voted out they voted to find the amendment unfavorable 911. Essentially, we looked at that same exact issue and we still voted out 911. So, any questions on that? Or anything else? We're good? Yeah. So, but I just want to be transparent that happened. So let's go off live. Eric should be on his way over. I said that we would be able to start at 1:50. So we can get through that and we'll have more time pre-floor. I don't think this walkthrough is going to take more than 50.